Petrucci.
And I'm Jordan Rudess.
And this is Inside The Astonishing. So welcome to episode 2. Welcome, Jordan.
Welcome, John.
Thank you.
All right.
So today we're going to talk about another sublime melody or reoccurring theme, and this one we call Faythe's theme. That's hard to say, Faythe's theme. So this is a very important and significant theme that kind of runs through the entire astonishing experience, and it appears in so many different ways, and it differs from the way that we did the approaches for Brother, because in the case of Brother, it was, I think, always in the key of D when it would appear,
right.
so it kind of went back to that grounding key. In the case of Faythe's theme, it appears in a number of different keys.
Yes, it bounces around a lot.
Yeah,
a lot of flat keys,
yes,
actually, yeah.
Exactly. So it's something that is associated with the character Faythe for sure. In fact, it's the main body of the melody and everything is during the song called "Act of Faythe," which really talks about her and kind of realization and an awareness that she has at that moment. But it actually first appears in the overture,
which was a lot of fun because we have the kind of openness to do whatever we want in an overture, and the whole idea was to bring in all these different themes in different ways and make it very dynamic and very orchestrational.
Right.
So this is a really fun example because there's a lot of different parts going on.
Yeah, exactly. And also the overture and the entr'acte were both written last, if I remember right.
Because we needed to have all our themes together before we could write those, because otherwise, how do you know what to do? And this was a real learning experience for us, because we were kind of like going along our way, composing the music and thinking, oh, we'll write the overture soon, but then, no, wait, we have to kind of wait till all the themes are in place.
Exactly, which was smart in retrospect.
I mean, the whole thing was really like this amazing, kind of fun, but a lot of work puzzle that we put together.
Exactly.
So this is definitely a big part of it, and a cool part, because again, the orchestrational aspect of it, knowing that we were going to use a full orchestra and a choir, we have all these things at our fingertips, kind of. So this one, let's see, you want to show?
Let's talk about the melody first. So it first appears in B, and the basic melody. It
has the nice little things in the basic melody.
Well, maybe not.
That's a nice though. You can't help it. It's in your DNA to play it that way.
Maybe think about that. That's basic.
Something like that.
Yeah. For really quickly, talk about for a second what we mentioned about this tension note appearing not only here but in the astonishing melody. So, right? So we're starting the melody on a kind of a weak note, but it's creating this cool tension.
Well, that's a real technique in writing a melody for people to be aware of, because it's kind of cool. When you write a melody, you're basically constructing a phrase, and in doing that phrase, you want points of tension and release.
Right.
So the fact that our Faythe melody kind of immediately jumps to a note that's not within the chord creates this kind of almost like longing.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
A lot of bands everybody plays with that in different ways, but some bands do it better than other bands, you would say, or some composers use it more effectively. So we're playing with that a lot in the Astonishing, to just create that kind of longing.
That's a great
emotion, the dynamic,
absolutely.
And we do that a lot in this whole work.
Right. It kind of pulls on your heartstrings when you hear that tension, because it starts off with tension, and immediately you get the sense of release.
Right. And in this case, it's like it's the fourth of the scale, moving down to the third. It's like the sus resolving to a major chord.
And it's also the same resolution that's in the main theme called the Astonishing theme, which we'll get to in another episode, but it starts very similar. Right? There you go. So we would call that, I guess, a motif on the album. So it's one of the motifs that happens a lot. So let's talk about the first appearance now that we have the melody. It's an overture, and there's actually 3 different parts going on.
Let's highlight the main part first. It happens in the brass,
Right.
so it's a big orchestral brass sound, and it's kind of like. And it's very straight ahead in the brass because the things moving around it are kind of involved.
Right.
Because there's also the I'm playing a harp part as well against it.
So there's another melody going on there too.
And at the same time as the brass and the harp are happening, John also has a pretty cool guitar part that goes against.
So what I'm doing is I'm doing an ostinato part that kind of outlines a B sus, I guess. And just by moving one note, I can make it into an E minor, which is the 2nd chord. So I start with this sort of. So just by moving the F sharp to a G, then all of a sudden the same notes down here turn it into an E minor chord. So the first chord, you have the B, and then you have E minor over the B. So,
It's all, one thing that quickly mentioned is it's all very kind of close voicing. It's like you have the B chord, and then without moving much, you go to the E minor, which actually the melody has the 6th in it. Then we move to the 3rd chord. So everything is kind of, using inversions that are harmonically very close.
Yeah, exactly.
To make it smooth. Shall we play it together?
let's play it together. And I really like that one, the one line that you have, the counter line in there is really pretty. I think that even helps with that sort of emotional thing that we were talking about as well. So let's try it.
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. We talked about this before in the other episode. Sometimes we have to get to another key. So we're going from B, and we have to get to D major, and that's why you hear all that sort of. You hear those little shifting key change.
Right. It's a
techniques as
real walk up
Right.
at the end. This goes basically E, F sharp, G, A is the 5 of D, and we're home.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
So on the album, on The Astonishing, before we actually get to Act of Faith, which is again the main sort of reason for this melody, the main appearance, it actually comes up again as a little bit of a hint in Lord Nefarious, where the song kind of breaks down. Change to the key of A, right? Now, in this case, it's different characters singing. It's Nefarious singing about how his family means so much to him. But we do the same Faythe melody in the key of A at this point. And I think I'm just playing some little guitar fills. But
Yeah, it's pretty straight ahead and very simple
Kind of mellow.
at this
What are you
point.
playing
So
there?
I'm just doing piano.
All right. So now you're not actually playing the melody,
No.
right? So the vocal now is playing the melody that was in the brass.
Right.
Right. And play that again. So what I'm doing is I'm doing these I just get to be the fill cap. Anyway, play that piano part again. Of it, and again, it's always kind of slightly different, just to kind of make sure that it's connecting properly with that character. Now that brings us to the main appearance, which is an Act of Faith. Now in this case, again, you're kind of more like comping.
Yeah, and actually I introduce it here just on the piano before the vocal comes
Right,
in. So
as
it's
a
a really
melody.
statement. Obviously it's an A flat major,
Yeah.
which is different. It sounds a little bit like this here. Nice half diminished chord. And then because it's an introduction to the melody, I'm doing like the chord in the second inversion and then the sus chord.
So you're setting it up, right?
Yeah, so
And
it's
then
a
the
setup,
vocal starts.
and then James comes in.
Right.
My accompaniment is very, simple.
Yeah. Now what you're doing there, I'm kind of mimicking in the guitar part once the guitar comes in on the second verse with it. So key G, well the first time it goes there,
Right.
the second time it does, we do a little Lydian vibe to get to the next key.
And then coming the bridge
Right.
comes in.
Exactly.
F minor.
And by the way, using that kind of chord with a Lydian tonality is a good way to shift keys very easily.
Dream Theater loves Lydia.
Yeah, they
We
love that.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So that's the main appearance in Act of Faith, and of course the song goes on, gets pretty big. After that, you're going to hear this again at the very end of Act 1, and I think there's something that's kind of interesting going on here, because this is sung by a different character, but it's talking about faith and hope, and it's Gabriel talking about where he's going to meet Faith, and they're going to have this kind of union to try to bring the two factions together. And the way we do it is with, again, a pedal tone with a rising internal
Right,
voice.
exactly. It's the
A
fifth that's
right.
moving up chromatically.
So a fifth, then a minor
Right.
sixth, then a major sixth, then a
Right.
flat seventh. So let's talk about that for a second. Again, it's in a different key, right?
This
It's
is in B flat.
B flat, so
Yeah.
a third key.
Right, third. It's a good thing we know how to play in all keys.
Hopefully. That's nice. And
Piano does.
yeah, exactly. So on the guitar, I'm kind of doing this motif where I'm playing the top note and then the bottom note in a sequence. Like,
That's cool.
yeah, it's almost like a TikTok.
That's interesting. I'm actually doing the reverse.
Okay.
Because I'm,
See, we're feeling this out.
yeah, I'm playing like the root and the third, and then this is cool.
Right. Now again, so over that whole thing,
And then the melody, yeah, right. Which is the vocal. It's not in the orchestration.
Yeah,
at that
exactly.
point. And then there's the very cool build.
Alright, so now the interesting thing about that, about the tag,
Uh-huh.
is that the melody is still continuing, but the chords are much, much different
Right.
on the ending. So
Right,
talk
there's
about
a
some of
lot
those
of
chords as
movement.
you go.
Well, let's
into
check them
it.
out. So first of all, this is a
Yeah.
pretty cool build, which starts on the dominant chord, right? And it's got an A flat over the B, flat, and then we start really moving. We play an E flat chord, but the bass moves up, and then it moves to an E flat minor chord in an inversion. This is where we start, having some real interesting movement in the lower end of the guitar, which kind of gets heavy, and we start having to use different inversions. So it's walks up, same chord, different inversion, and then right, and then a B flat chord with an F bass, and then we go to a D chord with an F sharp, and then a G minor, and then we walk down to an inversion of B flat again, and then F on the bottom, and then B flat. We walk down, so B flat is a D, C minor, and then B flat. Oops, B flat, and then F over A, and to G, and then we go to F sharp, because we want to modulate here to D. Yes. and then you go into a chunky chunk.
Right, exactly. So the interesting thing about that whole thing is that the melody is still continuing to be the same.
Right.
During all that motion that you just said.
So let's play it all through. Let's play the whole thing through.
Now, you can't play the.
I can play the melody too.
Okay.
Something like that.
Don't challenge Jordan. He'll always say yes.
I'll try. So I'll kind of modify my part a little bit so you can hear the melody.
So let me change. Let's see. I'm going to start with that.
Okay.
Okay. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, by keeping the melody the same, but having all this alternate bass movement, stepping down, chromatic rising up, is creating all of this excitement and tension.
Right. So you young composers at home, you can try something like this. You take 3 notes. And what are you going to do with them? You could go 1, 5, 1. Or maybe you could go. It's really important to start thinking about how am I going to use these? How many different chords can relate to a single note?
Exactly.
So I might want to go, right? Or there's so many choices, really. I mean, there's only 12 notes, but there are a lot of choices. So it's kind of like, where are you going and what are you trying to achieve harmonically?
Exactly. And the interesting thing is that every one of those choices, each one, it kind of evokes a different mood, emotion, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny how when you're writing with somebody where they'll play something and it'll just be one of 5 or 6 options, and you're like, nah, they're playing. It's almost like looking at paint swatches and being like, I don't really like that color. Like, that one really speaks to me.
Yeah. What's interesting is that in rock and roll, also a lot of times you go for basic like major chords or fifths or minor chords. In Dream Theater, of course, we have that element, but we also have an awareness and openness to like whatever's going to work orchestrationally. So blending a whole lot of styles. Yeah. So whether it's minor chord or half diminished chord, it's all fair game.
And it all has to do again with the mood, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to tell in this, with the music, and how it applies to what's going on in the story. So let's talk about 2 other instances where this comes up. One is just if you listen very closely during the walking shadow, since it is the moment where Faythe is about to be attacked, unbeknownst to her, you hear that melody in the background sung in a soprano in a very ghostly way, which is sort of a haunting thing that we did. Yeah. It's almost more of a production cinematic technique than a writing technique. And then finally, this is another writing technique at the very end of the whole thing in the song Astonishing, where all the characters are sort of saying their piece. And as they do this, those different themes are coming back for one final time. And it's kind of like its own mini overture-ish thing, but with vocals.
Exactly.
And since this theme came up so many times, we decided to do it a little bit differently. Right. And it might have been something that you did which inspired me, right? When you were playing this and you sang a vocal thing that was off of the main melody.
Main theme, right.
Yeah, and I was like, that stuck with me. It's like, that would be a really cool thing to do at the end when Faythe is singing.
Right. It gets a little bigger at this point, there's the themes are coming back in a more glorious way, and I'm really stating the theme, as is on the piano, but the vocal is doing something different.
Right, exactly. So now we're finally back to B on the end, and we return to our original. Right.
Yeah.
So in this case, the melody is stated first, so it's like. For So the cool thing about that was that, you know, you're getting the flavor of the melody, which has been stated over and over. You know, it's kind of drilled in at this point, and you're expecting it to be a vocal, but the vocal comes
Right,
in
it does something
afterwards.
different.
And I think that's really, again, it adds to that sort of tension release, and it's so uplifting because at that moment, you know, Faythe is expressing, you know, because of you, Gabriel, and your gift and the gift of music, I'm able to not only live again, but I'm able to see my full potential and live my life in a way that is going to be beneficial for society and the people of this great empire. So it's very dramatic in that sense.
And it's also, you know, doing that is a very kind of cool compositional technique, which we use a lot. A lot of times we'll write a melody, and maybe for a little while we'll think, oh, that's the melody of the song, and the next thing you know, the melody is actually something else,
Right.
but it remains on the piano or the guitar. So you get two things at once, but the listener would never know, but we kind of
Right,
and
exactly.
that's, you know, in other episodes we can talk about that, but it's definitely something that we do a lot of.
Absolutely, good point. So there you have it. That's episode 2, done and complete. Faythe's theme. Try saying that 10 times fast.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm John Petrucci,
I'm Jordan Rudess.
and this is Inside the Astonishing.